This week on The Breakdown, we look for answers after another All Black Test loss and we chat with Brodie Retallick. We dissect a massive weekend of international rugby and the Bunnings NPC Finals are this weekend. Who's going to take out the titles? Kia ora koutou katoa. Hello and welcome to The Breakdown. Yes, there is one more week of top-level rugby, whether it be the NPC, the internationals are going to come to a close. I was hoping to be talking about winning, not losing, and unfortunately the Black Caps this morning, I was going to change it to a cricket show. I can't even do that. Sir John Kirwan, Mills Muliaina. Why did the All Blacks lose? Someone explain this to me. The fact I felt that this was their strongest team they could put together, JK. Ireland came out and played some inspired rugby in front of 51,000 people at Aviva Stadium. Is the pressure well and truly on going into France?
Well, I said it totally pressure on. If they beat France, then you go, it's been a pass mark, and they'll be relatively happy. They've, brought some young guys in, Mills. So I think the bigger picture is, fast line speed, someone who matches our aggression at contact. When we can't get a hold of the ball, do we have a plan B? So,
4 years it's been, though. 4 years of the same pressure from sides, the top-tier sides, whether it be South Africa, whether it be England. We've seen Ireland do it. Even Italy, the week before, put us under all sorts of pressure, Mills. Not necessarily on the scoreboard, but they found a way to disrupt our game. Do we need to address the way that we are playing the game against the top sides?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's always talk about not reinventing the wheel, but I think there needs to be subtle changes in terms of our whole game plan and what we're actually going into and trying to do some subtleties in what we're doing. I think the disappointing part is obviously we didn't have any ball. You mentioned possession and we didn't have any territories. And when we actually got the ball, we panicked. And I know that's pressure. But some of these guys that actually panicked are well-established guys. The skill set, which we've always sort of harped on about, and this side of this part of the world is extraordinary. But we didn't show that, and so we struggled to get into the game. We struggled with momentum, and the end result was we lost.
Yeah, look, I said the 3 Ps. Eric Colassi, great, famous Maris man. Possession, position, and points. Right, and when you look at our game on the weekend, we did not have the possession that we needed. Now, it couldn't have gone better for Ireland, and good on them. They played what I would say probably their perfect game, and they're continuing to be outstanding, so that's fine. But it couldn't have gone worse for us. I think we started relatively well. We were trying to play a kick-pass game, Mills, and then Brodie goes off. Anton Leonard-Brown gets injured. We're probably going to talk about halfbacks, why that didn't get changed. We were getting bashed up at the advantage line, and then we were doing some silly things that I couldn't understand. TJ Perenara taps and goes once, and I didn't disagree with that, but it looked like no one was on the same page. So there was a few things that just didn't go right for us, and we're under the pump.
Mills, I have to ask you, though, and we've all been there, the fact they have been training and playing for the course of now 10 months. Yes, it's been interrupted from time to time. This has been a long tour. We've been through this as players. When you get to this point of the year, and everyone has bad days at work, right? Everyone in every walk of life. This was a bad day at work for the All Blacks. But it is a real thing, fatigue, particularly, I think, here, not so much mental fatigue, I think physical fatigue. Just the number of games, the number of trainings. You talk about small percentages. We were off with small percentages and we got well and truly dominated. And saying that, 26-20, one forward pass, one half a foot forward pass from Rieko Ioane, and we could quite possibly have won this test match. So it can't be all bad, but is it a real thing when you get to this point of the year? Fatigue.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely, I think it is. And I asked, Sam Whitelock this last week because usually, the more experienced guys, they experience that. They go over there and you've got a 4-week window, and then by week 2, I'm over it. I'm keen to get home. But they've been on the road since August, and so when you're going through that, it's all right for the young guys. This is something new and an experience like that. But it's that grind. Turning up to training, making sure that you're freshening things up. So the weeks are different in some ways, but it just goes to show what professional sport's all about. One little wee bit, if you're off by one little percentage, you lose. The key for the All Blacks is if they have an off game, if you're 1% off, that you still win, and that's always been the benchmark for an All Black team. Unfortunately, they're catching up. They haven't changed, they haven't done any subtleties in their games. And I'll add another P word to there, and is they weren't patient. They weren't patient enough and on the same page. They sort of try to and shovel on stuff to other guys.
There's been 45 seconds of deep breathing over there.
Yeah, no,
45 seconds of JK just in and out, in and out.
I was shaking my head because I don't disagree with you, right? But for me, the discussion is, like, they're fatigued. I mean, we're fatigued. I'm fatigued. We're all COVID fatigued. So you can imagine how fatigued they are on being in lockdown and staying away and all that sort of stuff. That's a given. The answer we need from this is, what are we going to do, even when we're fresh, when there's fast line speed? Are we going to look at the game plan? Are we going to change things? And I think it's a positive that we've lost, because what happened against England in the World Cup? So for me, this has happened. This is really good. Those young guys need to learn. But what are we going to do? What are we going to do now? We came up with pods 10 years ago. What are we going to come up with now that might surprise the world? I said on the weekend, do we just go wide? Let's have good old double miss and set really wide.
But if you think about those pods you were talking about, they're not getting us go forward. We are getting dominated. The fact that is being physically dominated against the top sides who are fit and strong and well and truly organised, that's not a game plan for me. Mills, we're not going to physically dominate these professionals. We certainly aren't going to physically dominate South Africa on a regular basis. They'll have to have a bad night for that to ever happen. So if our defence is so strong, our physicality was there. I see that. Pure and simply, isn't this about us making those tweaks you're talking about, considering what Ireland did to us? Because we pressure on defence, and they were able to breach our defensive line. They were able to find holes and gaps. If you look at them, they had numbers on the outside. We were having to come in defensively. Look at the variations. They've got numbers out the back, finding the edge. Look, we were under stress and scrambling for much of this game.
Yeah, and the key is, look at all the sacrificial runners, the guys that are in front that the ball's going in behind. What they're actually doing is checking guys. The lines that they're running when they come around their corner, they were going wide and then they're straightening up, whereas what we're doing is we're just giving it to a guy that's flat-footed and expecting our skill set to win that sort of physical dominance. Yeah, I agree. I mean, in terms of the physical dominance, the South Africans are big, strong men, so are the Irish, but we've got to bring that subtlety. We've got to be all on the same page in terms of our line running. We run out and square up, guys that are in front that are getting missed and being able to hold someone up. So it does open up a little wee gap. But at the moment, in the weekend, they didn't show that. They didn't show that they're on the same page, and therefore no holes opened up, and they keep shoveling, ball to each other when they were going sort of sideways. It's easy pickings.
Yeah, no, I agree, Mills, but I also will say that for me, it couldn't have gone worse for us, because I think they went out there and they tried to break down the fast line speed with the kicking game. Bowden was trying that, then he goes off, then it got a bit disgruntled. And I also think if you want to play against the fast line speed, you need incredibly quick ball from 9. You need to give the backs a little bit more time. And so it'd be really interesting to see if then all of a sudden, you know what it's like, you haven't had the ball and you can't establish a pattern. You can't say, I'm going to try that, that's closed, then you try something else, which Ireland got to do. But I think it's a good thing. But we do need to see some change. It looked like their front row, for the first time in my entire career, were more skilled than ours. Now, that might have just been a night off, but our set piece is really good. So we're scrummaging and we're doing the line-outs well, but are we going to have to sacrifice a little bit of set-piece dominance for a bit more ball play if we want to break teams down? Because we can't keep running into those defences, I agree.
I think we lack variety in our attack. And that's what we saw from Ireland in terms of they were finding ways to get to the outside channel. They were running decoy runners as well. Their decision-making was very, very strong. But in saying that, their structures allowed them to have a bit more creativity. And like you say, held our defence. There were some standout players for Ireland as well. One of them probably could have been playing for us if he'd hung around in James Lowe. And this was a big moment for him because he was a player in the Ireland system that had a couple of tastes of it, but they weren't 100% sure. This was his breakout game. That was a massive tackle in the context of the game. I was fortunate enough when he trialled for the New Zealand under-20s when I was a resource coach doing some work for New Zealand Rugby. He didn't make the New Zealand under-20s team when, to be fair, I did rank him 1 at fullback and 1 at wing, but they decided he wasn't good enough, and then they gave me the exit interview to tell him why he's not in the team. I then proceeded to say, well, I picked you, and I was never required with New Zealand Rugby again. That was the end of my career coaching with them. But I look at that and go, you know what, Jamison, Gibson Park, Bundy Aki, James Lowe, all have had a real positive impact on their rugby.
Oh, yeah, they have, and they'll be heroes now, aren't they? I mean, all that controversy around the eligibility and what they produce, and now they're Irish, they'll be loving them out there. What I do take my hat off to them, and no, they probably wouldn't have been All Blacks. Well, they weren't. They were at a stage where guys in front of them were a lot better than them. And so when you take your hat off to guys that have to make that decision, you've got to remember these guys, they want to be All Blacks. They've come through the system wanting to be All Blacks. But when you make a decision to not do that because people are in front of you and go over there, that's a brave decision. And then to come out the other end and play for the Irish team, Bundy Aki, Jamison, and also now James Lowe. That's awesome. And what does that say about the depth that we have in New Zealand rugby? Those are the guys that we kind of do want to lose, but we don't.
With you.
Yeah, I mean, Jamison Gibson Park was outstanding. He could have been an All Black, but he was young with me. He was loose. You know, he was just loose.
He was a halfback,
very loose.
Yeah, he wasn't. He didn't have the application to maximise his ability back then. And he's gone overseas and he's done that. Lowe was always good enough to be an All Black, I believe, but he had some amazing people ahead of him. And same with Bundy Aki. You know, I think these guys were good enough to be All Blacks, but they had a line of people in front of them and they've taken their opportunity. So, you know, I think it's a real positive. But to say they weren't good enough, I think is a bit harsh. And that's the beauty of our competition, right? Yeah. That you can be around, you know, you can be around a long time. How would you be if you're a number 8? Like Jordan Tofoa, for example.
Yes.
You know, good enough to be an All Black, got selected, got injured, never played. So, you know, and I think they've taken their opportunity overseas, and
Absolutely.
I think that's a great thing. And it was a huge day for them. But I just want to keep coming back to, they were amazing. The Irish side, that's probably the best game I've ever seen them. You've got to take your hats off to them. And some of the things that our All Blacks did on defence, you can build on. I mean, amazing. Amazing. However, come back to this coaching staff over the summer need to go, this can't happen to us again because it's happened Ireland 2 years ago. You know, England in the World Cup final. And I don't actually care. I think it's a great thing. But what we need to be able to do, next year, different attack patterns to break it down.
Care. No, you care. You care a little, right? You know, you care a lot.
I don't care if we win the World Cup or if next year in the Championship we have massive line speed and we can see a change in the players implementing a game plan.
Well, there are players who are getting their opportunity, and the Healthspan Elite Performer of the Week voted by you, the fans, and there were some standout performances and guys who had an influence on the game. And our Performer of the Week ended up being Will Jordan, once again, scoring another try. Dalton Papali'i and Geordie Barrett had an influence on the game. Dalton Papali'i, 26, 28 tackles, I think. What a massive shift. But Will Jordan continues, JK, to put his hand up, perform on the big stage. This was another good weekend for him and probably a guy who cemented his place and start against France.
Oh, brilliant. I'll come back to the whole of Canterbury voting again. Because in a game like that, he was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I think he's incredible. He's going to break all the records. But in a game on the weekend, I would have given it to Dalton Papali'i for his 28 tackles.
So is that voting fatigue in Auckland then? Is that what we're talking, Mills, when you think about what Dalton did and as a guy who's at the moment and has been keeping out the All Black captain in waiting again, Sam Cane, but Dalton Papali'i's game, I think it was a huge shift.
I'll elaborate more on what you mean by this sort of game. This is a tight game. This is a game where you needed to make your tackles, you know, because we made 200 odd tackles throughout the whole game, and he did that. He put pressure on, and when he got the ball in hand too, he also set up a try. So although he wasn't out and had a little bit of space where Will Jordan was, which he's in outstanding form, this is a sort of game where you need to roll up your sleeves because it wasn't going our way. We weren't getting any ball, so we needed that sort of front foot in terms of the defensive effort, and he created a lot of that. He needed to make a lot of those tackles.
The two greatest players that we've seen in the All Black jersey in recent years, McCaw and Carter, both came through massive losses in the World Cup to learn. So on the weekend, guys like Will Jordan, guys like Dalton Papali'i need to learn from that and go, right, retrospectively, what should we have done when we're under the pump? And that's the beauty of that game. The coaches over the summer need to go and go, right, we can keep playing like we're playing because we'll beat the majority, but when it doesn't go our way, are we going to bring up, you know, we need to be a little bit different, I think, in our game now. Change it.
Change it. Who's capable of changing? Well, the All Blacks can do that from week to week. Will we see it this week in Paris against France? That is on Sunday morning. And Brodie Retallick now joins us after arriving there. And Brodie, how important is it for you and the group to finish 2021 against France on a positive note?
Yeah, thanks for having me on guys. Yeah, it's massively important. Obviously, we coming out of the back of Italy, we were targeting, the Ireland and then the French test to head home with another 2 wins. With not getting the job done on the weekend, it has, it's hurt, like it's disappointing with the result. But to finish this week, we need a win, and it's going to be pretty tough sitting in quarantine if we don't get the job done. So there'll be a huge focus leading into the week starting today.
Brodie, the perception at home at the moment is that when we come up against a side that matches our physicality and brings big and fast line speed, we tend to struggle. I mean, when you talk about these games, is the game plan you guys have got to execute against that, or you're just trying to break them down in different ways?
Yeah, I think we knew it was coming. We knew what the Irish were going to bring. We tried to, during the week, target to get the ball to the middle of the field a little bit more and find some space, and then we could open up some two-sided attack. I think we struggled to do that a little bit, and also, trying to win any game of rugby, let alone a test match against the Irish with 39% of the ball is not good enough, and it makes for a tough day at the office trying to win a game with that much pill.
Guys, I know you're disappointed about the loss in the weekend, but this has been a pretty long tour. It's been a tough tour as well. You went away in August, and I asked Sam this last week, but the mental strain on some of the guys, I mean, what have you guys done? I know you've spoken about, or Fozzie's spoken about, breaking it up into mini tours, but what have you done to freshen guys up and to change things up at training? I know Nick Gill always brings a little bit of bubble and squeak with some egg games and things like that, but has that been a challenge to rock up at training and not have the same thing week in, week out since August?
Yeah, I think on the whole, the group's actually done really well in that. I know when we left, we knew what we were heading into. I definitely think it could have been a lot worse than what it has been in terms of where the group's at, that's for sure. So, yeah, we have tried to break things up and have a lot of fun, and at the same time be able to relax. Also, we can't get out of the hotels too much, so having some fun around the hotel and all those kind of things. I thought there was a lot of energy in the group last week. And, we expelled a lot in that first half, making a lot of tackles. But, we got 1 week to go, and, like I touched on, we want to come out on top. So we're not sitting in quarantine with the same feeling again.
It's pretty easy for us sitting at home, Brodie, looking at games. But they spoke about the physicality. But when you're out there, what does a physical game mean for you personally? What does that feel like, and what do you go through?
Yeah, I guess it's there's obviously the physical battle at the set piece, but it's kind of 8 on 8. I think. Where at times we struggled a little bit in the weekend was the speed of their ball when their forwards coming around the corner, especially from set piece, and they're just running straight at you and recycling the ball a lot quicker. We weren't able to slow it down. So when you have those massive collisions, one-on-one, trying to tackle an attacker, that's where the sort of physicality comes from me, and that's where you feel it the most, I think.
Do you get time to think? Because it looks so fast. At times it must be hard. You're trying to get round the corner. Do you just sort of go into a training mode as far as trying to react? How do you deal with that sort of pressure?
Yeah, I think, especially in the weekend, that's exactly what you're right. You're trying to scan to see if they're switching back or where the opposition players are going. But at times you're just trying to get around the corner and face up and come forward again. And where we struggled a little bit there was not being able to slow the ball down at that ruck time, and then you're always on the back foot, and like I say, you're reacting rather than trying to get an attacker to come in and make 4 feet versus 2. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a focus this week to get right before we head into the weekend.
But awesome effort on defence, though. I mean, you made 1 million tackles in that first half, and it still went up, at the break to come back out there and tackle a lot. So you must be proud of the guys and the way they sort of performed in terms of the tackle and the percentage as well.
Yeah, I think it was an awesome effort, like heading into the break just in front. I thought there was a lot of pressure And we talked about converting that in the second half, but again, we sort of struggled to build any phases and build some pressure there. So I think the boys can be hugely proud of that. I think like Dalton Popoli, he made 28 tackles. I think that's the most tackles I've ever seen an open side make in the test match since I've been here. So it's a huge number. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of that going on.
Brodie, I have to ask you, the fact there's been so much talk about the potential of this French team and the way it has changed in recent seasons. What are you expecting? What are you preparing for? Is it going to be a different challenge to the likes of Ireland and South Africa, the big Tier 1 nations we've faced this season?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be too much different. I think, they know what we kind of know what they're going to do. They're a little bit unpredictable, like any good French rugby team is. But I think it's similar to what everyone else is doing. Like you've got the big forwards carrying the forward, and they've got some exciting backs, and a number 9 that's controlling the game well for them. So I didn't see too much of their game in the weekend, but I saw them versus the Argentinians, and Argentina took it to them up front and got a little bit of momentum there. So. Again, it's going to come from there, and we need to find some go forward through the middle of the park.
Guzzler, please tell me at the aftermatch you gave J-Lo a bit of stick for his celebrations, mate, because honestly, they were yuck.
I saw him out on the field after the game. I said, I wish anyone scored but you, mate.
Just lastly, Brodie, look, I know you don't want to think about it. We've all been there. The fact it's coming to the end of a long season. This has been a long tour. Are you looking forward to getting home?
Yeah, I think it's only human nature to look forward to get home. Like it's tough when you ring the kids and they ask them when Dad's going to be home and stuff like that. So, it will be nice, but at the same time, it's going to be even better to come home with a win against the French in the weekend. So, we get that right and hop on the plane on Sunday and come home. We'll top it off.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for joining us on The Breakdown. Look after yourself. Good luck. And we look forward to seeing an All Black performance on the weekend that I'm sure is going to do us proud.
No worries. Cheers, guys.
He knows how to get himself up for the big game. Brodie Retallick, I've got no doubts that he'll understand how to help lead this team. Big week this, JK. You talked about the pressure well and truly on. So, Aaron Smith's in town. Sam Cane's available. Samasoni Tokiaho is there. They've got options. Damien McKenzie, Richie Mawanga, the selection debate. I thought there would be reward for the players who had played well to play against France. Bodie Barrett may be ruled out through his concussion or head knock. So when you look at this, do they make changes, particularly through personnel? I'm still surprised that Finlay Christie did not play in this game on the weekend. But in saying that, they obviously had their reasons. The red carpet for the All Blacks, but where do you see the first crucial decision-making of this selection?
I'd actually, like I mentioned before, I think we need to start understanding what our priorities are, right? And our priority for me, personally, I don't know what theirs are, we've got to win along the way, but I'd be playing some young guys. Yeah. I'd be actually getting them out there in this cauldron to get them used. So we talk about experience. Richie Mawanga came on in a really difficult situation, and did he help to execute the game plan? That's an open question that the coaches will be asking him in the Monday morning meeting this morning, right? But he needs to learn that. Like I said, Richie McCaw, the biggest learnings he ever got was losing at Cardiff. Dan Carter the same. You learn from that stuff, but then you've got to implement it. So if we want to get to the World Cup, I'd play Dalton Popoli again. I think just Sam Cane, good to have him back in, but let's get him ready for next year so we've got this backup. I'd play some of the younger guys and give them experience and put them out there and say, go, boys, there you go.
So Anton Leonard-Brown has been ruled out. He is not available through injury for this last Test match, so that midfield discussion, Mills, who is it that gets the opportunity? Is it David Havili? Does Rico Ioane remain at centre, or does Quinn Tupaia force his way in? Or Braden Ennor out of left field? You talk about one of the young guys with plenty of potential. Who gets the responsibility for you in that midfield?
I think I'll go on JK's, sort of what he's thinking, in terms of the young players. I think Quinn Tupaia gets an opportunity. If they're going to persist on Rico Ioane, he needs to get back out there. It's such a hard ask to go from wing to centre wing. If he's a centre, we'll make him a centre. I think this is a time now for them to establish with what he actually is leading into the Rugby World Cup. And if he's not good enough to be on the wing and he wants to play centre, and not good enough to play centre, well, he's on the bench. So give him that opportunity to get regular game time. I kind of disagree with Papali. I think he's proven himself. I don't think he needs to get back out there for France. Put Sam Cane back out there and see where he's at in terms of the higher stuff. France is an awesome place to go. Paris is outstanding, and give these guys opportunities. The likes of Hoskins, Tupou Vai, Quinn Tupai coming back out there. When the band's playing in the stadium, let's see how they go. But as a coach, when you're under pressure, and you guys have both been there, when you're under pressure, you've just lost the weekend before. Do you take that risk and say, well, I'm going to put guys out there and risk the fact that we're going to lose? I think you do. I personally think you do. Well, the pressure's not on me, but I would live with the fact you put young guys out there to experience this and see how they go.
Anywhere is a good place to go right now for us. Let's be honest. Anywhere would be wonderful, JK.
I would play Finlay Christie, though. I would start him, and I'd bring Aaron Smith off the bench as early as you want. Give the kid a test match, he's deserved it, and then bring Aaron Smith on early in the second half, What do you do at lock? Do you rest Sam, or probably not Sam, or do you just Brodie and put one of the young guys out there? But I would come out as the coaches and say, this is why we're doing it. Yeah. Our goal is to win the next World Cup. And I think you've got to trust, and I'm with Mills on Rico. He's either a centre or a wing. I think he's a world-class wing, and I think he could be a world-class centre, but defensively, you've got to live out there, Mills. I never played centre, you did. And you've got to live those moments under pressure to know when to jam and when not to. So you've got to have time. Do we need a Ma'anonu Conrad Smith combination that we need to play for the next 2 years? All those questions I think we need to start saying to ourselves now, let's do that. If it's Rico and Havili, as much as we can, let's play them.
I'll be fascinated not to see who plays, but how we play. Whether we make adjustments or whether we continue to stick with the game plan we have tried against some top-tier teams in 2021. We've been under pressure at quiz time, and I think you delivered on cue last week, Mills. You delivered brilliantly, given you didn't play in either of the games that the question was about against Ireland, which is disappointing. It's time, I imagine, to be with France to discuss something in the past with this. Here's today's trivia question.
Kia ora, guys. My name is Eric Laser. I'm a sports producer and director for television. And I was actually part of the Breakdown family not so long ago, so it's a real pleasure to ask you tonight's question. The question is, which of you three played the most test against France? Which of you three played the most test against Les Bleus?
He was the original producer.
Eric.
The original producer, Eric.
He's gone as grey as me in lockdown.
Yes.
What's going on, Eric? Hey, look, suits you though, brother. Grey's the new blonde.
It was 30 minutes non-stop my ear, Eric talking over and over again. Opinion. What was going on? It was great fun. All right, I tell you what, a fascinating discussion, debate. You guys are counting in your head. I'll be doing this in the break. This wasn't the only international team from New Zealand in action over the weekend. The Black Ferns were playing in France against France, and Chelsea Ellie, one of our team, wasn't in the match day 23, but we gave us a little bit of insight what happens getting closer to the big match.
Kia ora guys, we're here in France and it is our first game against France very shortly. So I'm going to just follow the girls around and see what they get up to prepare for a big test match. sitting here with Stacey Flula. It's not long till kickoff. How are we feeling?
I'm ready. I'm a little bit nervous. I always get nervous before game. Good nerves. So as long as I channel them in the right way during the game.
Do you have any like pre-match rituals that you do each week?
Yep. I have to wear scrunchie. Green today. And I have to wear black undies and bras.
Interesting facts that you never knew about Stacey Flula. Good luck today, girl.
Thank you.
Well, as you guys know, back in studio and at home in New Zealand, we went down 38-13 to a really strong French team today. It's disappointing for us, but another week of huge lessons learnt. We're going to be better for it next week and after this tour. And it has been unreal to play in front of this French crowd. They're so passionate and just an awesome experience. So stick with us. We've got another game next week. We'll be stronger each week and we'll be back. So thanks for following our journey today.
No, my hockey, my welcome back to the breakdown. Before the break, we talked trivia. Eric Lazier, who was the producer of the breakdown when we very first started, offered the question of which one of us, JK, Mills, or I, played the most games against France. So let's rank each other. Who do you think played the most, JK?
Yeah, I did.
Who was second? Who do you reckon played the
Mills.
second? Mills, and then me. Okay, and what about you?
I'll go with his answer.
You go with his answer? You're trusting that. How many do you think you played?
12.
That's a guess, though.
That's a lot.
It's a lot of games.
I think I played 6 or 7.
Oh, I'll tight you then, because I think I played in 6. All right, here's the answer. Eric, what do we got?
And the answer is JK with 12.
Oh,
Congrats,
no
JK.
way!
Jeff, I know you scored that beautiful try in '99 Twickenham semi-final, famous one, but you played 4 times against the French. Mills, 10 years later in 2009, an amazing try against Les Français, but you played 9 times. So the answer was JK with 12 tests. Ciao.
Merci, Eric. I'll send you a bottle of wine. Nice.
And then send him an invoice later.
Yeah, no. Oh, you get the invoice with the wine. Are you kidding? He's French.
Eddie on.
12 times. Gee.
Oh, man, I'll tell you what. We'll be tested. We've got one more week. Please send us through. Someone send it through to us. A question at thebreakdown.co.nz. Question and answer. See whether or not we can, I suppose, get it right for one more time here on The Breakdown. Black Ferns over the weekend played against France, and for a 3rd week in a row, Mills, this was a dominant performance, and it wasn't by the Black Ferns. What is it that we know right now about where our national women's team is at?
Well, they're well off the button, aren't they? They're well off the mark in terms of, next year and where they need to get to if they want to win this Rugby World Cup. I think the pleasing part is they've been on tour now. They've been, I suppose, exposed in these last 3 weeks. But, man, they have got a long way to go. And I think there'll be some honesty as well in the camp in terms of where they need to get to, the competitions they need to actually try and get up to, and the level they need to get up to. They haven't even played the Irish as well, because the Irish are pretty strong too. So they've got a long way to go. I'd be a little bit worried too if I was in that coaching staff.
Yeah, it's a similar argument to the All Blacks. I'm not worried about that one loss against Ireland. If we improve and guys get experience from, we see it later. The problem I've got with the Black Ferns is they have not improved over the last 3 games. And that's what I was expecting, because I thought we'll see them improve defensively. They've been leaking defensively, making some bad decisions. So, at some stage you've got to go, we need to see improvement. So it needs to come this week, and it needs to come fast, because you're away on tour, you're working on your game every day, and to see some of the same mistakes, I think, will be disappointing for them. We know it's been a hard year. We know that next year there is now, Super Rugby, and Do we need to add a couple of test matches before the World Cup? This is huge for us. We need to get it. The other sides, they look more physical, Mills. They look bigger and stronger for some reason.
Is that the question I have for you then, Mills? The fact it appears as though the other teams have really raised their game. They're already good, but their structures, their conditioning, their execution. You talked about it before, it didn't go well for the All Blacks. Everything could have gone wrong. The timing for the Black Ferns in regards to this tour, the lack of rugby going and preparation going into it. But do you look at it and go, there's some obvious things that they can improve on very, very quickly? Or, like you say, is it going to be a race against time now for Rugby World Cup next year?
I was actually surprised about how big of the gap is. You know, I thought, you know, being current world champions, I know they haven't been, you know, on tour for two or so years, or had test matches for 2 or so years, but that gap is just massive. And I do understand that they've got a Six Nations over there, they've got a premiership for the women's, but I think if you strip it right back, we can't sort of go into this Rugby World Cup and say, you know, we need this, and pour everything into it. You know, they've always had adversity, these girls, so they'll come back from that. But how do we get them now, and with what they've got in place? You know, do they need to add a couple more test matches? Yeah, I think possibly do, you know, that top-level stuff. But they also need to understand that, hey, where's our top team? Because this was very experimental too in terms of getting some game time for some young players. Yep. OK, do they now say, well, this was an experiment and we go back to some of the ones that we left behind? Or is it a case of just growing it and believing in the plan they've got in place? The key thing is, they haven't got much time, even though it's next year.
Well, I'll tell you something, and you'll probably never hear me say this again, but maybe thank goodness for COVID. It's the only thing positive it's maybe given us, because, you know, in 2 years have the opposition got away from us, and this has been an opportunity to go over there and go, wow, we need to reset. Because imagine if the World Cup did go ahead last year and those players turned up like that. But what I noticed was actually a big physical difference. You know, the girls look better conditioned, and they've come out of Six Nations. So the positive for me is, well, the negatives, I didn't see much improvement. The positive is we now know, and we've got a lot of work to do, and we don't have a lot of time, but at least we know.
And they've got one more test to maybe finish on a positive note to close the gap, or if they can finally get some cohesion, because they were in this game for a bit of time, but once it got away in them and it got deeper into the game, France continued to dominate. That game will be critical in how they end their season. Well, the international window in the Northern Hemisphere that we are currently experiencing, it is closing, and the spoils, they were shared on the weekend, north and south.
Price, Russells, players all over the place, not seeming in any particular shape, but again it's Duhan van der Merwe who takes it. Now Stuart Hogg on the inside. This is where Scotland can cause so much damage. Duhan van der Merwe and Harris looking for Price on the inside, but it's Stuart Hogg who rumbles away to score underneath the post. Willie LaRue now, and here is Yankees on the outside. Damien Dialeke, oh great pace, and there's Mbappe. That is exceptional rugby.
Kittel. He can really run when he gets a chance. Look at this. The offload to Latu. Oh, and then it's grabbed. And away goes Sam Simmons. And Simmons has got Lamar alongside him. And the hooker is going to add another try to what is a remarkable try-scoring record.
Taken for Lamar. The way they go, Fiji. This is like 7-star now, isn't it? Tui Subu, the fullback. Here's the link play. And here's the opportunity for Nea Salevu. You beauty. Williams again. Now Nick Tompkins. Here is Reece Samet. Reece Samet, that chip into the in-goal area as he got the pace to get there before the Fijian can.
Yeah, some outstanding action over the weekend. We know the result between Ireland and the All Blacks. England took care of business against Australia, an ill-disciplined Australian team which gave away plenty of penalties. South Africa did what they needed to do, come over the top of Scotland. The French Barbarians were dominant against Tonga, concerning for Tonga after their performances against the All Blacks as well. France, well, they took care of Georgia in preparation for the big test match. This weekend, there's the Pumas getting a comprehensive win over Italy. Italy would like that to be a little bit closer. And then Wales defeated Fiji. Fiji, I think, conceded a red card, 3 yellows, and every other bit of trouble they could find in the game. And almost, they were a lot closer than that. They were right there for large chunks of it. But I think South Africa is probably an important place to start because they just continue doing what they do and do well. They are now back to the #1 team in the world, taking over the All Blacks. That goes back and forward, back and forward. But I tell you what, they did what they needed to do. Scotland have been improving, but JK, this is an important win.
Yeah, I think South Africa have sort of got that balance right between, you know, that hard running forward, the high kicking, and then using their backs like you can see here. So when they play with that balance like we saw in the championship, they're a hard side to beat.
No, definitely. And I think what it will do too will give confidence to their domestic game in terms of where they've been at. You know, back in South Africa, I know they've introduced a lot of the overseas players in the international window, but it also gives confidence to their domestic game in terms of the players that are there and what they're doing. So being back on top of you know, #1, albeit 3 or 4 weeks ago, I think the confidence and that loss against the All Blacks has actually, you know, kicked them into gear. So they're producing they're producing the goods, aren't they?
There was a pitch invader at this game, but it was in good fun. Sia Khaleesi, pen in hand.
Oh, man.
And for good measure,
Bit of a hug.
Thanks very much. Give us a hug and away you go. Look at that. I like that. That's the way it's supposed to go, right?
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
The right attitude. Wait till the end of the game to get up close and personal with the captain of the Springboks. OK, a lot of other performances. Argentina beating Italy. Wales getting lucky against Fiji. France beat Georgia. I mean, you look at those results, JK, when you talk about form, those are probably 2 form on rankings. But Fiji, for me, are probably the one are showing those signs. They showed them against the All Blacks. They were well and truly in this game for a long, long time. I think they were very unfortunate to concede a red card. We won't get into the referees and TMOs because we do that every week about some of their decisions. But I tell you what, I really like the direction that they're starting to head.
Did they look at the thing 347 times, like our yellow card? You know, we do need to talk about the referees, and the referees do need to do something about the game because I think it's a bit of a plight at the moment. But Fiji, when they were good against us, Mills, in Dunedin, they were very good. And I am really excited about, you know, next year being in the Fiji Duro being in the
Yes.
Super game. You know, I think the Fijian side is back and they've got that balance right. Their forwards are fitter, you know, they're all running with the ball, and I think they're incredibly well coached. And so I think they'll be a real threat.
An important win, though, for Wayne Pivac as well, though. He needed a positive result. Look, it's one of those things that's really hard in the Northern Hemisphere. You need to show those signs that your team is on top of it. A guy was heralded, but all of a sudden, a couple of losses under his belt. That was important to get a good win.
Yeah, fickle over there, and need results, and those results need to be W's. But yeah, it was for Wayne Pivac in terms of his squad and what he's, you know, trying to develop over there. Obviously, winning the Six Nations last year, and then, you know, a couple of losses against the All Blacks and in South Africa. So, you know, he'll be fairly confident enough there. But, you know, just to that, I'm glad that Fiji are improving, because there's always a tendency when you play the All Blacks after that just to go over the Northern Hemisphere tour and then dip off. They're actually rising, which is outstanding. You know, not outstanding just for Fijian rugby, but Pacific rugby in its whole, its whole. You know, it's outstanding.
So if you think about the back end of the Rugby Championship, Australia make all of this progress, playing outstanding football after their disappointments against the All Blacks. They take on England, are ill-disciplined, and they were never in this contest, JK. Second week in a row where they've been comprehensively outplayed. Is this a concern for you, the fact that they make progress and then on the back of it, even a couple of performances, they tend and seem to go backwards?
No, I think that when you're building a side like Dave Rennie's, then it takes 3 to 5 years. And, you know, you need a dominant number 10 that runs your game plan. And they're not there anymore,
Yeah,
you know. But you can't get continuity.
Rely on the one tier.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. To build a football team, you need 3 to 5 years. So Dave Rennie's come in, you've seen some amazing improvements, and then they have these days where they might get a little bit ahead of themselves.
But James O'Connor was back. Hold on, James O'Connor was back.
James O'Connor has never been a 10.
Yeah, but he was the guy that was going to be selected before Quade Cooper got reintroduced back into the squad.
You know why? Because they've got no one else, mate. He's a centre. Never been a world-class 10 in his whole life.
His performances through Super Rugby were improved. I mean, this is the challenge for the Wallabies. They can't afford to go through the same scenario next year, can they, Mills? they get to an end-of-year tour and not have their top tier of players available.
This is where their new rules are going to be significant, because they are going to have their best players available, and they've gone about that purely because of these results. They've done this before. You know, the Wallabies have gone on end-of-year tours and they've lost a couple in a row and things, but you know, it's about now, you know, whether Dave Rennie is going to be patient enough. You know, obviously those guys are the young guys that they're going to experience that. Is it enough? I don't know. It's almost like we spoke about a few weeks ago, a couple of steps forwards, massive step back. You know, how far back have they actually gone now? That'll be the concerning part for the Wallaby environment.
I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to after the break, because what I do is I get off the Southland Stags bandwagon and I now go onto Otago's bag, and it's time for us to talk about what's happening on the weekend. It's time for the NPC Finals.
One of these two teams will have a date with destiny this weekend.
Ioane showed it, took on the line, he breaks through, puts on the afterburner. That is absolutely brilliant from Otago.
We're a tough side to play, always struggle against Southland.
Gets the ball away too beautifully. Now Florence, he might go all the way himself.
They're unbeaten this season for a reason, Taranaki.
What a ball! Little man on big man, and the big man wins. They'll scamper it away.
This Tasman team, they got their championship pedigree.
A grandstand finish to a grandstand match.
A little bit of footwork, a right footstep.
Something out of nothing.
And they turn up tonight and they put on a clinic.
It happens on Saturday afternoon, the Championship and Premiership Finals, 4 p.m. Taranaki play Otago and Inglewood. Saturday at 7 p.m, Waikato, they take on Tasman. And guess what? As of today, we now know it can be in Hamilton, FMG Stadium. Look, I'll tell you what, let's talk the weekend. Taranaki took on Southland, atrocious conditions. But Taranaki, in the end, they snuck through. Maybe suited Southland a little bit more, Mills, but this was an impressive performance because they needed to go to work against a really desperate Southland side.
Yeah, Neil Barnes was pretty happy after this.
He was, wasn't he?
Considering, you know, they were right in, a couple of nice tries. That weather, you know, really evened things up, and you know, Southland rolled up, you see. But they showed some nice skills as well, the Taranaki teams, and some brilliant tries and pulled away in the end. So
chasing the perfect season too. Chasing the perfect season, Taranaki. Look, I know there's disappointment that they're not in a position where they can get promoted, but COVID has determined that, JK.
Now, haven't we got a vote that we want to get rid of this championship
Actually,
stuff?
it could be the last time. I don't want to speculate on that now, but you think about them playing against Otago, who were very, very good against Manawatu. Manawatu were at home, but Josh Ioane, when he's in this sort of form, this is a great pick-up for the Chiefs, isn't it, for next year's Super Rugby competition? But I think Otago's experience and talent ended up coming through.
Yeah, look, and I think with someone like Josh, you know, All Black, we're waiting for him to kick on, we're waiting for him to do a whole lot of different stuff. And when you see him play like that, he can totally dominate a game. So, you know, they've had him at fullback, they've had him at 10, they've had him everywhere. But when he's in that sort of form and that sort of position, the defence can't run off him, Mills, and he's a threat.
Key is he needs to back up, because we've seen performances from him like this where he's carved up, and the following week he's been very quiet. So I think when you go to Inglewood and play Taranaki, he needs to be on fire.
Yeah, think about it too. I mean, Manawatu got some real momentum when Aaron Smith was in their squad, did a great job, and they played the right style and brand to get themselves in that position, but Otago just had that little bit too much. Waikato play Tasman, no Canterbury in this game, but I think about what Waikato did, and they had to do very similar to what Taranaki. They went to work against the Canterbury side, which in the end, JK, they were deserved semi-finalists, but not quite good enough to get across to the next line.
Yeah, and I think, you know, when you think about Canterbury, they always come right at the good end of the season. But Waikato probably got off to a little bit of a slow start, but then they've slowly built on that. And probably were underestimated a little bit early in the season, but they've continued to build. And unfortunately, like you've seen with Hawke's Bay, that I was sort of hoping would go all the way just because they've been consistent. When it's finals footy, you've got to build to those finals.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping that too. I mean, they've built for the last couple of years. They've been very, you know, they've been great over the last couple of seasons for Hawke's Bay, but this is the ability that Tasman have. I mean, they hit a sort of a wall middle of the competition. They've come back, and you know they're starting to hit their straps, you know, right at the perfect time. I think the big thing for Waikato, that big boost, is having it at FMG Stadium. That's going to be massive for them, because this side here, they're just running in some hot form.
Does it ever rain in Hawke's Bay? Does it ever rain in Hawke's Bay?
No, but Taranaki, they'll be praying for snow. on Mount Taranaki, and then the wind slowly blowing off across the
pseudo-target, wouldn't it?
What's that?
They had a pseudo-target, wouldn't it?
No, what do you
roof,
want
eh?
about? They play under a roof.
Yeah, they've
that's
got
what they
luxury
do.
now.
I mean, that's what they do.
So you've changed your allegiance from Southland to Otago.
Play for both teams, JK. When you play for both teams, you can pick either. That's just the way it works, right? And then we're going to move on from that before you get carried away. All right, the opening weekend of Super Rugby has been announced today. Super Rugby Pacific, and here it is, Moana Pacifica. They open up the competition against the Brumbies at Mount Smart Stadium on February the 18th. The Waratahs take on the Hurricanes. That's to be confirmed where that game is. That'll be in Sydney somewhere. Blues take on the Fijian Drua, and that is on at Eden Park on the 19th. I'll get to that in a moment.
Don't start me.
Well, we'll start you in a second. And then the next three games. Crusaders take on the Highlanders at Orange Theory in Christchurch. That'll be a cracker. The Reds, Chiefs, Suncorps, and the Force Rebels in Perth. I'm not sure. I'm assuming this is Sansa. I don't think we had anything to do with it. How could you have back-to-back games?
Please.
Why is it?
Please.
Moana Pacifica playing the Blues at Mount Smart Stadium?
Please, this is
Why
entertainment.
is that not happening?
Please, this is entertainment. We now have two Super Rugby sides in Auckland, right? Rugby is not cheap anymore. Do you think we're going to go on Friday and Saturday? Let's have a double header. It's beautiful. We can all go. Do we not just sit down and go, let's start the season. We've got Moana Pacifica, right?
Drua.
We've got the Drua in town.
Bring Pacifica
forward a month. Do we not look and go, this is actually marketing and economy, right? So do you really think that Aucklanders are going to go to 2 games that weekend, whoever sat down and organised this? It's the perfect opportunity to celebrate Pacifica.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it'll be great to see them in action. Disappointing thing for me is, like you say, I don't necessarily get that on the first weekend. What I will get, though, is what happens in Paris between the All Blacks and France. We have to go back to that, because if you're thinking you're Ian Foster, there's some pressure on Mills. Significant, right?
If you're in that environment, absolutely there is. You want to finish. You mentioned it after the game, you know, that rock underneath your tail. Of course there is, but he needs to get past that, I think. I think you need to get past the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is how we win the Rugby World Cup.
JK, before we go, we've got to get it up on the big screen, though. I'd love to, if we can. The Mo. It's been 2 weeks. Movember for Mills.
Talking about the Eiffel Tower.
It's massive. It's massive.
Talking about Paris and the Eiffel Tower. Take a look at that.
Hey, look at that.
Look at that,
That is
baby.
impressive.
Hey, that's enough. That's enough. Quiet.
It is impressive. Come on now. Look at that. Thing of beauty. 1 more week, you'll get to see it. We'll see you in 7 days. A wrap up what's been a fantastic 2021.
I looked into the eyes of many of the Frenchmen, and I knew we were going to be up against it. One of my testicles has been ripped right out of the scrotum. These sort of things do happen, and you've just got to play on.
If we lose the World Cup, then you will blow 100 years of tradition.
World Cup winners. One of the all-time great tries.
The try from the end of the world, they called it.
Over. The biggest upset in World Cup history. Rocket photo. It's a gift. There's always something happening when Sebastian Chabal is involved.
Ball pass, the referee's missed it.
I've lost words, really. It's one of those days that you'll forget.
Well, this is it. This is it.
He's nailed it. And the All Blacks are the world champions for the second time.